What is going on, guys? This is Crowsin, and welcome back to another Oblivion Remastered build. This time we have the Warlock Spellblade build. So the Warlock build plays a lot like a spell sword build, except that it's a little bit more defined than that. So we're going to be using a lot of fire destruction spells as well as curse spells like damage and drain health. We're also going to have summons that are going to help us aggro enemies, and just being able to be proficient in both melee and range damage while not wearing any armor at all. So it's a very nice thematic build that I'm sure you guys are going to love, so let's take a look at it. So beginning with our race and our class, we are going to start out as a Breton because they make for great spellcasters, and they also have some very good defenses like plus 50% to their magic resist, and you're also going to get a plus 50 magicka boost right at the start of the game. So I highly recommend going with the Breton, but of course any race will work. As far as the origin, you could pick whichever one that you want here, but I personally like to go with High Rock because they do start with more speed and less strength, and we're not going to be using any kind of weapons that are going to need strength, so you might as well just go for more speed for that quality of life. For our class, we're obviously going to choose a custom Warlock class, and for the specialization, I recommend going with Magic here, since we're going to use a lot of different schools of magic. For the two favorite attributes, we're going to go with Intelligence and Agility. Intelligence will give us more max magicka, and Agility is going to affect the damage of our short swords. As far as our major skills, we're going to select one combat skill being Blade, since we are going to be using short swords. And for the magic skills, we're going to choose every school of magic that's out there. So all of these are going to be very useful for our build. I would say the least useful one is going to be Mysticism. So if you want to go ahead and swap this one out and choose Alchemy, you can. But I'm just not a fan of wasting too much time with Alchemy myself, so I just choose Mysticism. As far as our birth signs, there's going to be two good ones for our Breton, and the first one here being the Mage, as this is going to give you a plus 50 boost to your magicka. The second option that you have is going with the Apprentice, and you're going to start out with a plus 100 to your magicka, which is double that of the Mage. However, you are weak to magic, so you're going to be 100% susceptible to magic. Now the Breton will counter half of that because they do start out with a 50% magic resist, so really you're only going to be 50% weak to magic. However, I personally don't go this route, I just go with the safe option, and that is the Mage. So next up, we can go over our attribute level path, and I like to set priorities whenever I do this. So what I normally do is go for 5 intelligence and 5 agility until I max both of those out. From there, I do like to put 2 points in endurance and keep doing that until I max out intelligence, and then I will start putting 5 points in endurance, and then from there we can also start leveling up our willpower. So those are going to be our 4 main attributes that we're going to need to go for. Then we have the option of either going with speed or strength, and I personally go with speed as we don't really need strength for too many things other than carry weight. So when we hit level 30, this is how our attributes are going to look, and as you can see, we're going to have everything maxed out other than strength, personality, and luck, which is just fine for this build. So one of the most important parts for nearly every build is your equipment, and this build is no different. So we're going to start out with the weapon, and the best weapon that you can get in the game for our build is going to be enchanting your own at the Mages Guild. So make sure that you push all of those Mages Guild recommendations, or just simply go to the Wizard's Tower in order to unlock the Altar of Enchanting. Then go ahead and select your weapon, select your Grand Soul, and then you're ready to start enchanting. So when we enchant our weapon, always pay attention to the order in which we have things listed here and try to go for the damage effects first. And since I did want this to be a Warlock thematic kind of vibe, I only settled for damage health, fire damage, and drain health. Now obviously stacking more elemental effects is going to be better than damage health, however, it's not going to matter in the end. Trust me, you're still going to do a lot of damage with this weapon. From there, I add Soul Trap 1 second in order to recharge my weapon very easily with Azura Star, and then Weakness to Fire 100% for 1 second, and then the last effect should always be Weakness to Magic 100%, and for this I go 2 seconds. So where all the damage is going to come from is going to be these Weakness to Fire and Weakness to Magic effects after your first attack. So every subsequent attack after that, it's just going to multiply all of these effects, and every hit is going to deal more damage than the last. As far as our armor, the best enchants that we can put on those are going to be the Transcendent Sigil Stones that we can get from completing Oblivion Gates at level 17 or higher. So I like to use those Transcendent Sigil Stones for the majority of my armor, so I like to go with the Fortify Magic of 50 points on my hood, and then also the Wrist Irons. So make sure that you do keep the wrist irons that you get at the very beginning of the game, because those are the only gloves in the game that you can enchant that are unarmored. And that's going to be important for maintaining 100% spell effectiveness. So what I like to do is just wait until I get to level 17 and slap the Fortify Magicka enchant on them and just wear them for the rest of the game. So for the rest of our armor, what I like to do is go for those elemental shields. So one fire shield, one frost shield, and then also one shock shield. And not only will this give you a 25% boost to all of those elements, but if you take a look at our armor rating, it's actually at 75, which means that we basically have 75% shield going as well. So this is going to give you very good defenses while not having to wear any kind of light or heavy armor. For the amulet, I like to go with the Spelldrinker amulet that we get from the Mages Guild. However, the Necromancer's amulet is actually going to give you some crazy Magicka boosts. The problem is there's no legit way to keep it in this game unless you just don't turn the quest in. So you can choose if you want to use that or not, but in my case, I just go with Spelldrinker amulet. For the rings, I like to go with Ring of Protection and Sorcerer's Ring that you can find out in the world. Sorcerer's Ring is going to be nice because it also stacks with that spell absorption from the Spelldrinker amulet, and you get a plus 25 to your Magicka. Your other option is going with the Mundane Ring here and just swapping out the Ring of Perfection for it. That way you get 100% resist to magic, which is really nice for a Breton. So now we can go over some of my favorite custom made spells that I use a bunch on this build. So I highly recommend that you guys follow all of these and just go ahead and create them at the Arcane University. So the first one being Willpower Boost. What this basically does is it fortifies my willpower by 100 points for 70 seconds. And this does cost quite a bit of Magicka. However, you regenerate so fast that it works out very well if you go ahead and cast this right before you go into a dungeon or right at the start of a dungeon, and that way you're going to have some crazy Magicka regen for about 60 seconds. As far as my destruction spells, I only use 3 of them. I have a target spell, I have another high damage target spell, and then I have a touch spell. So to begin, I got a spell that I call Cursed Fire Dot, and basically what this does is it applies fire damage and damage health as well as drain health for 10 feet, and then the fire and the damage health is going for 5-second duration. And then I also apply weakness to fire and weakness to magic for 5 seconds. So this is basically like a debuff. It doesn't really require too much Magicka. You cast this at the beginning of a fight, whether you are in melee range or from afar, and it'll debuff the enemy to where you can go right into your short sword and get a very high damaging hit, or follow it up with another spell for even greater damage. And that greater spell that I use, I call Cursed Fire Blast, and basically all this is 100 points fire damage on target for 3 seconds, as well as drain health for 3 seconds, so that way if they do survive with less than 100 points of health, it'll just straight out kill them. So this spell does require a lot of Magicka, but it's really a one-shot spell. So what I would normally do is just use a Cursed Fire Dot once or twice, and then go right into that Cursed Fire Blast for some crazy one-shot damage. Another spell that you can get that works out very well is Wizard's Fury, which you can get from the Mages Guild, and at level 30 they will have these effects here. So this works out very well as a one-shot spell if you use this after that Cursed Fire Dot, which will debuff them with that weakness to magic, and this hardly requires any Magicka. Like, the efficiency of this spell is very good if you do want to use it. So my melee spell is actually called Expert Death Touch, and basically what this does is it damages the health on touch as well as drain health. It soul traps the enemy for 2 seconds, and then it also applies weakness to magic for 10 feet for 4 seconds. So this is a very good debuff spell that you can use before you go into your short sword, or if you just want to spam this without wasting any of your charges on your short sword. For the main conjuration spell, I do like to use Summon Zivili, which does require 100 conjuration, but these guys really just fit the thematic vibe of being a warlock. Now you will have other options early on in the game like Summon Flame Atronach, and those things work out very well, and they deal fire damage, which is really the theme that we want to go with. And just like in my Stealth Archer Conjurer build, you can actually add a shield, fire shield, frost shield, and shock shield to these conjuration summons, and that's going to increase your armor rating. For the next spell, I do have a command spell which I call Command All, and this commands a creature or a humanoid for 3 seconds, level 25, which is the max level that you can command a creature on, and this basically requires hardly any Magicka. And the good thing about this, when you do have 100% spell effectiveness, you can pretty much command anything in the game. As far as the duration, it doesn't have to be that long. I settle for 3 seconds so that way the enemy doesn't go back to instantly attacking me if I only put this to 1 second. But the bottom line is you don't really have to have this like for 30 seconds or 60 seconds. What'll end up happening is that the enemies will still attack the creature that you commanded even after the duration is gone. So if you guys watched my Stealth Archer Conjurer build, you will know that I also use Resto Power for my Restoration spell, which is a Fortify Willpower 100 points for 7 seconds, and then Restore Health 100 points for 2 seconds. Now it doesn't have to be 100 points on the Restore Health, and it doesn't have to be 2 seconds. You could play around with both of those settings. You could go for like 3 or 4 seconds for like only 50 points. Anything works here, but the bottom line here is that it regenerates a lot of health, and it also regenerates your magicka very quickly right after you cast this. Another spell that I use a lot is called the Luck Charm. You guys might remember this from the Stealth Archer Conjurer. Basically just to charm people, get them to tell you anything, and then also you can use this right before you barter with them to get better prices. You can even do this before you create a spell or before you create an enchant for better prices. And finally, one thing that you're going to use a lot to counter our low strength is going to be Feather. So once you have 100 alteration, you could go ahead and buy Beast of Burden, which will give you 250 points for 360 seconds, which is very nice. Early on in the game, you can create your own for 100 points on 120 seconds. Once you get to Expert Alteration, Pack Mule is just going to be better, which you can just buy, and that's going to work until you get to the Master level in order to get Beast of Burden. So for the next part, we can go over some combat tips, so be sure to stick around so that way you learn how to play this Warlock build. So to begin, I highly recommend using that Willpower Boost spell at the beginning of a dungeon. That way you can regenerate your magicka very quickly in the background, and it just helps with the flow of the game and also being able to just cast more spells overall in those 60 seconds. You're not going to have to go into your menu and drink some kind of magicka potion or anything like that, so it really works out well. And when there are multiple enemies, this is a perfect opportunity to use your command spell, as well as conjure any kind of summon that you want. In my case, I like to use the Zivalai a bunch. And this works out very well to balance out the aggro, where a lot of these enemies are just going to attack one another and they're going to attack your summon. So it's going to help get all of that aggro off of you and onto the other enemies. As far as combat, we have a lot of different ways that we can initiate. I like to start out with that Cursed Fire Dot from afar, and then if I am trying to save on my weapon charges, I will just use that Death Touch in order to kill an enemy that way. If I'm looking for a big damage boost, I will go into my Cursed Fire Dot first, and then go right into Cursed Fire Blast in order to basically one-shot everything. And melee damage by itself is so powerful with this build that you're going to be killing nearly everything in 2 to 3 hits, and you're also going to be able to do different types of combinations, like going into a Cursed Fire Dot from afar, and then going in there and just whacking the enemy 1 or 2 times to kill them. Another thing I highly recommend is that you go for Azora Star as early as you can in the game. That way you can put this on your hotkey, and anytime the charge runs low on your sword, you can just go right into Azora Star from your hotkey and recharge your weapon. So thank you guys for watching till the end, and I hope you enjoyed this Warlock Spellblade build. And this build is going to be a lot more fun than just the regular spell sword builds that you're going to see out there, where this one's a little bit more defined and thematic towards being a warlock, so we're going to have a lot of fire and a lot of damage and drain health spells to mimic that. So let me know what other types of builds you want to see, and I will see you guys in the next video.